The conflict of the Second World War begins in 1938 when Hitler seizes Austria and Czechoslovakia. 1938 is the biblical year of the Shemitah, and it begins a 7-year biblical cycle, 1938 to 1945. The world cataclysm will follow the biblical cycle of the Shemitah.
As the year of the Shemitah, 1944 to 1945, approaches, the Second World War reaches its peak. Again, the Shemitah brings the falling of powers, the collapsing of empires, and the nullifying of landscapes. And it builds up to the greatest power of nullification the world had ever seen, with the dropping of the atomic bomb. The 7-year cycle and the year of the Shemitah reach their end in the first week of September 1945. That very same week, the Second World War reaches its end.
The war is sealed by the victors' procession in the streets of Berlin days after the surrender of the Japanese Empire. It is the only procession that will take place at the war's conclusion, sealing the Second World War.
The date of that procession is September 7th, 1945. That's Elul 29, the Shemitah's climactic day, and the very day that ends the 7-year biblical cycle.
It was linked to the economy and was linked to the blessings or sustenance. But it's even bigger. The Shemitah, the mystery of the Shemitah actually also lies behind the rise and fall of nations themselves. It actually gives the timing of global events, global cataclysms, when powers, nations, kingdoms, empires rise, when they fall, even the rise of America and what may be the fall of America. This is so big, it has affected everything. So one of the mysteries in the book and in the DVD is called literally the rise and fall of nations. And the key here is, or the precedent is, that when the Shemitah came upon Israel as a sign of judgment, this is in the days of the prophets, 586 BC, when they are wiped out, the Babylonian captivity, 70 years, the Bible says it was all geared to the timing of the Shemitahs. The land rested 70 years for the Sabbaths or Shemitahs that the land did not rest. So the judgment is timed by that. But as we alluded to last time, is that for that to happen, the entire world history had to revolve around God's timing and here in the Shemitah. That is, for the judgment to come, Babylon had to rise. They rose just before this happened. Nebuchadnezzar rises at the time of the Shemitah, or when this is going to be fulfilled. Then the Babylon had to fall as a kingdom because the Jewish people had to be released. The land after 70 years goes back. So Babylon falls, linked to the Shemitah. Then Persia, the Persian Empire, has to rise to say, Jewish people, you can go back. So the 70 years of the Shemitah will be exact. So world history is focused on this. So could this be affecting world history even in modern times? And the answer is amazingly yes. And I believe we have a clip from the DVD that begins to uncover the rise and fall of nations in the time of Jeremiah. And so could it affect the rise and fall of nations in the days to come? That's the issue. So there's so much in that. But there's another thing, I'm just going to throw this in, called the mystery of the towers. The mystery of the towers, and that is this. In the Bible, there's a link that between the rising of high towers and the rising of power. The tower, in fact, in Hebrew, the word for tower is Migdal. We actually get Mary Magdalene from that name, Migdal. Migdal comes from the Hebrew word Gadal. Gadal means greatness, increase. So it's about even pride. So there's a link between. From Babel, from the beginning, it begins with Babel, the tower going up. Well, what about America? Well, the amazing thing is that in the year 1870, America builds the highest tower on earth for the first time, the highest secular tower in the world. First time, it was always Europe. Within 1 year of that tower going up, America becomes the strongest economic power on earth, replaces the British Empire, begins the American age of rising, then becomes the military, till we are the superpower. From that day, from that tower, and it starts building the highest towers in the world. Well, there's a mystery of the towers as well. When America reaches its peak of power relative to the rest of the world, 1945 emerges this, there is a tower or a building that's conceived that year that we all know of, and that's linked to even the Harbinger. And I believe we have a clip linked to that's in the mystery of the towers in this DVD.
Well, let's see it.
So the tower is conceived in the year of the Shemitah, 1945. begun in the year of the Shemitah 1966, completed in the year of the Shemitah 1973, and then in the year of the Shemitah 2001, it is destroyed.
Towers speak of the rising, the power, the glory of kingdoms. But the Shemitah speaks of the fall of nations and the humbling of a nation's glory. In the year of the Shemitah, at its climactic last week and peak, the towers of a nation's glory fall to the earth. At the Shemitah's time of nullifying, the towers are nullified. And it was shortly before the year 2001 that something momentous happened in world history. As the 20th century came to an end, the age that had begun in 1871 also came to an end.
America's days of boasting the highest towers on earth were over. It had been eclipsed by others. Now the highest towers on earth rose from Asia.
We've seen a connection between the rising of towers and the rising of kingdoms. But if the rise of high towers speak of the rise of nations, then of what does the fall of a tower speak or foreshadow? It all took place in the climactic days of the Shemitah of 2001. The warning of the Shemitah is this: a nation's blessings, its prosperity, its sustenance comes from God alone. If a nation greatly blessed by God should drive God out of its life and defy Him and war against His ways, then those blessings, that prosperity, and that sustenance will be removed. And in the case of a civilization that has reigned as head of nations, the crown it has borne will be removed. It's the first time in 2,000 years that the land is being restored to the Jewish people. The year following the Shemitah was September 1917 to September 1918. The Balfour Declaration takes place in November 1917. Thus, the land is restored to the Jewish people in the year following the Shemitah, corresponding to the Jubilee. It's a prophetic Jubilee, and according to the mystery, the Jewish people now would return home to the land they had lost, to their father's possession, to their ancestral homeland. Everyone shall return to their possession. The mystery of the Jubilee concerns the seventh Shemitah. So what happens if we move forward in time from the Shemitah of 1917, 49 years to come to the seventh Shemitah? What is the seventh Shemitah? It brings us to the Shemitah of September 1965 to September 1966. The year following the Shemitah would begin September 1966 and end September 1967. Did anything significant take place within that year and within those dates? Any event of restoration? The answer is yes. According to Bible prophecy, the Jewish people have to be restored not only to their homeland, but also to their ancient holy city of Jerusalem. In the midst of the Six-Day War, Israeli soldiers enter the Lion's Gate of the biblical city of Jerusalem. Through gunfire, they make their way to the holiest site in Judaism, the Western Wall. There they weep. And after 2,000 years, the Jewish people are restored to their ancient capital, Jerusalem. It happens on June 7th, 1967. Within the parameters of the year ending in September 1967, the year following the seventh Shemitah, the Jubilee. The seventh Shemitah had ushered in the second restoration of the land. According to the mystery of the seventh Shemitah, the Jewish people had returned to what they lost 2,000 years before, Jerusalem. They had regained their long-lost possession and returned to their ancestral home. The two great restorations of the land each happen according to the mystery.
The Bible ordains that in the year of the Jubilee, the shofar, the ram's horn, is to be sounded. the first thing that happens after the soldiers reached the Temple Mount in 1967 is that the ram's horn is sounded from the Temple Mount, the sound of the Jubilee.
The man who sounds it is Rabbi Shlomo Goren. Rabbi Goren was born in the year 1917, the time of the other restoration. When he sounds the shofar, he is 50 years old, the number of the Jubilee.
The mystery of the Shemitah lies behind the two great end-time restorations of Israel's lands. Now, the pattern and cycle does not have to continue, but if it did, what would be the seventh Shemitah from the last restoration?
The seventh Shemitah begins September 2014, goes to September 2015. The year following the seventh Shemitah is that of September 2015 to September 2016. While the cycle doesn't have to continue and nothing significant has to take place, in the last two occurrences, it has meant war in the Middle East, war in the land of Israel, and a war resulting in a prophetic restoration.